Hello, this is Jean Marie Ward for Buzzy Magazine. With me today is award-winning writer Nnedi Okorafor. Welcome, Nnedi.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Your fiction is closely connected with your heritage. How did Nigeria become your muse?
I think that it was something that was completely organic and not something that I could have predicted. It just was. The first story that I wrote was set in Nigeria, and it's been like that since then. I think that when I look back, if I were to kind of deconstruct things, I think it became my muse from the early trips that my parents took us to Nigeria. You know, they were so full of the wonderful and the terrifying at the same time, full of so many extremes and so many details and so many memories that those not only colored my childhood almost the most, but they were the most memorable memories that I have.
On the flip side, how has your American heritage and sensibilities played into your writing?
I think that the American side of me, it's more of the craft of it. The idea of writing science fiction or what's considered fantasy is more of a Western construct, and it's something that I learned in this country. It's not something that I can say I learned from the Nigerian side of me at all. And so I think that that's the strongest influence. Also, I think the fearlessness that I write with about difficult issues is probably a very American thing too. That whole idea of freedom of speech and the need to tell those stories regardless of anything. I think that's definitely my American side. So I think the idea of writing something that where I wasn't hesitating at all in telling the story is the American side, and then also just the craft of it, the craft side of it, the format of it.
Yeah, so the craft and the writing what scares you comes from the American side of it.
Yeah.
And you're still writing what scares you. That's cool. You love creepy crawlies. I know that you once considered becoming an entomologist.
Yes.
Nigeria has some amazing creepy crawlies in terms of both real creepy crawlies and legendary creepy crawlies. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about them?
Okay, I think one of my favorite creepy crawlies that I caught when I was in Nigeria was it was a multicolored grasshopper, and it was huge, and it's the kind of thing, and it was just sitting right outside the house I was staying in. This is when we were staying in one of the more rural parts of the country, and I just saw it right outside the house near the doorway, and it was one of those moments where you see it and you're like, you cannot believe it's that. And then also you think, okay, that thing must be poisonous. It has to be. Look at it. It is a very strikingly colored grasshopper. Grasshoppers usually aren't poisonous, but so I made a choice. It's like, either I'm going to get poisoned here or regret this for the rest of my life. And for me, I'm very big on grabbing insects. I let them go, but I have to grab them. So this one, I grabbed it. I grabbed it. And it gave me the hardest kick any grasshopper has ever given me in my life. And so, but it did that, and I held it. It was hardy and very hard. You know, it had a very hard exoskeleton. It kicked me, and then I let it go. And so I'm glad I did that, because I would have regretted not grabbing it. Then there was also the dinner plate size spider that was in the house.
Sort of as a pet?
Yes. It was so huge that I brought in my cousin. He was like 20-something at the time, and he took one look at the spider and got scared too. Right. So this was not a normal spider. So yeah, both of those creatures have made it into my stories in some way, especially that spider. You'll notice that spider a lot.
Yeah, well, spiders have a mythology all their own.
They do.
In many, many cultures. Do you feel you have a writing mission with respect to Nigeria or Africa as a whole?
I think that first and foremost, because I love stories. I just love stories. And first and foremost, I want to tell a good story. And that whole idea of of reading something and it's so it reads so smoothly and so effortlessly that when you're reading it, it's like you forget where you are. You're somewhere else. You are someone else. You kind of disappear. Like, I like to imagine that I disappear if I'm reading that kind of story, and I love that phenomena, and I've wanted to duplicate that. So that's my number one mission, I'd like to say. It's my number one mission, and I want to take people to a different place. And I want to, when I bring them back, I want them to be changed. I want them to be changed and affected so deeply that they are not the same from that point on. Even if it's in a young adult book, I want to do that. So that's the first thing. In terms of a mission for Nigeria or Greater Africa, I think when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about it at all. I'm just writing the story. But when I look back and I go through the editing process, which is when you're more conscious, because when I'm writing, there are times where I actually disappear from there and I don't even remember where I got that story from. When I'll read things that I've written and be like, who wrote that? When did I write that? Ooh, that's good. So when I'm editing, though, it's you're not in that trance-like state anymore, and so you're looking at things more closely. You're amping things up or toning things down or shaving this thing, and that's when I realize certain themes. And I know that one thing I tend to do is I'm very one of the things I want to do is write. I want to write strong female African characters. That is a thing for me. Why? Because I read a lot of African literature. I do see strong female African characters in African literature by women, not so much by male writers. I think that often they subjugate female characters in ways that a lot of them I don't think even realize. But I want to see not just strong African female characters, but complex and heroines. That's important to me. The heroines doing heroic things, even if they make mistakes or do stupid things. I want the heroine. So I think that's something that I'm bent on doing. In terms of male characters, African male characters, same thing, but in a different way. Not so much in the forefront, but it's still very similar to that. I want these strong characters in African settings. I think that showing Africa in the future is important. I think that my voice will hopefully be one of many, because I think that there is a need to show Africa in the future, because the future, science fiction is a predictor in so many ways of the future as a whole, and if there are no Africans being shown in science fiction, that's basically erasing us from the future, and so there's that. So I think if I had an agenda, which I don't think I have a conscious agenda, but I think I have an unconscious one. I think those are a few.
But in crafting a story about Nigeria, you also draw on wonderful stories from the past. You've mentioned that you come from a family of storytellers.
Yeah.
And here in the U.S., we don't see those stories in the same way we see Snow White or Cinderella. Where can people go to learn about these wonderful stories that are out there now? I know where they can go find you, but where can they find these other stories?
It's weird because, well, there are books on African folklore, and so there are those. You know, you've got the books that are specifically on books of gathered tales from whatever. But I noticed that when I read those, I don't enjoy reading them at all. I don't feel badly when I say that. I just don't enjoy, because they are in writing. You know, and those stories are best told orally. They are made to be told orally, and they just are more fun and enjoyable when they're told orally. So I noticed that the stories that I get are from talking to people. Talking, especially older people or even younger people who have gotten to hear those stories and who can recite them, and they don't, typically when they can recite them, they don't even know they have this valuable story. They don't even know. It's not important, but they just know it. And so I'll get to these moments where they can just tell me these, like my ex-husband was able to tell me, there was one specific story about how the tortoise got its cracked shell. He'd been told this all his life, and it was nothing to him. But when he told it to me, I was like, ooh. You know, so I found that getting the stories directly from sources is the best way. You know, then there are times where outside of the books, it's during bits of research where there's one story that I found about a West African writing script, and I used this in Zara the Windseeker. They have these baboons in Zara the Windseeker who can tell fortunes and do all this stuff, and they speak in sign language. I got that specifically from when I was doing research on this West African writing script, and it was a small little tale where they told the researchers were told the origin of this writing script from the natives, and it was a story about these baboons who came out of the forest and sat with two men and taught them this writing script orally, like they told it over a fire. It's the kind of story where if you read this in any Western book, people would feel insulted. They're like, so these Africans got their writing script from monkeys? But when I read it, I was fascinated, and I thought the story was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was a small little thing. So it's like you find the tales in that way, these off-chance different ways, and so it's difficult in a lot of ways. Getting them like that is difficult. You're not going to get them just from a book that's been published. You're not going to get them that way. You can get some of them, but you're not going to get the really good ones, and you're not going to get the essence of it that way, which is unfortunate. And it's difficult because that whole oral storytelling thing is it's different. You can't look it up on the internet. You got to actually talk to people and get that.
What a
get
scary
it that way.
concept!
Yeah.
Talking to people.
Yeah.
What are you working on now?
Right now I am working on several things. I'm working on the part 2 of Akatawitch. It's called Breaking Cola, and it's a direct continuation. It's the first time I've written something in a series where I'm doing a continuation of the story, and writing it was a lot easier than I thought, because I always have too many ideas, so I'm all over the place, and I don't want to continue with the same thing. I want to move on to something else immediately when I'm done with that thing, and so when I returned to Akatawitch, well, Akatawitch I knew was a series to begin with, so when I returned to it, it was easy to write. It was much easier than I thought, so I did that. And we're in the editing process of that. And then I recently sold my adult science fiction novel Lagoon to Hodder and Stoughton in a 3-book deal. And that one is basically an alien invasion in the city of Lagos, Nigeria. So there's that.
Cool.
Yeah, that one's going to be fun in so many ways. And then in that 2-book deal or 3-book deal, I also sold the Book of Phoenix, which is a prequel to Who Fears Death, but it's a very creative prequel, very creative. Like I said, series. But and the Book of Phoenix started off as a short story, which was published by Clarkesworld. Then I kept going, and it expanded to a novella, which was published by Subterranean. So you can easily get a good preview to the Book of Phoenix, and then I've expanded it to I wouldn't even say expanded. I finished the story in a full-blown novel. And then lastly, but more the next thing that's going to come out is my short story collection called Kabu Kabu, which comes out in October from Prime Books, and that one features a novella that I wrote with Alan Dean Foster, and called Kabu Kabu. It features a story that is in the world of Who Fears Death, directly connected to Who Fears Death, and one of my favorite super short stories called The Magical Negro.
Oh dear, I've read your thoughts on The Magical Negro.
Yeah, the story is just as biting.
Oh wow. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you've gotten everything. Done a lot of talking.
Thank you so much, Nettie.
Thank you.
And thank you for Buzzy Magazine.